Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Thanks for joining us for this week's Martial Law with Colby Marshall. Colby, what's that shirt you're wearing?
Well, Matt, it's an Iona shirt, and I'm wearing it. Why? Because Iona is all over the MLR. When you talk about Utah Warriors, you think of John Powers. I know they lost, but they're a team that looks like they can play with anybody in the league. When you think about the Giltinis, you think of Watson Filigatonga. The Giltinis are the best team in the league. And then you got Rugby United New York, who had a huge bounce back win. And who do you think of from there? You think of Connor Buckley. Iona contributes to winning, Matt. That's what we do.
I can't argue with you. Does everybody think of Filicatonga when they're thinking of the Giltinis? Maybe not.
I think they do. I think they do.
The Gales blowing like a gale force wind across Major League Rugby. Let's get to martial law, Colby.
All right, so first I want to break down Utah versus Seattle. This was a game that was a game of territory in the first half, and it was 15-15 in the dying minutes when Hagen Schultz had the ball in his own 22, and he made a 60-meter kick down the length of the field over Seattle's deadline, which proved to be the turning point in the match because Seattle ended up having possession in prime position to score the game-winning points of the match, in which they did by way of Aaron Matthews. So that was an impressive kick by Schultz, but it really pretty much gave Seattle the game-winning points of the match.
Yeah, that thin air helps that ball carry. It might have carried a little bit too much for him. Obviously, it did. Next one up.
Yeah, next one up is LA versus Toronto. Now, LA came out in this one a little bit flat, but they controlled possession for the majority of the game, so Toronto wasn't really able to capitalize in that first half. And I think it's saying something when the game's 16-9, and you can say that your team came out flat. If you're the Giltinis, 16 points for them is coming out flat, which it is because they've been on a tear in recent weeks. But when the second half started, they started the second half like they've been starting first halves of games, and they blitzed Toronto right away. Were able to take advantage of Toronto not handling the second half kickoff, scored a try right away to put them up 23-7. And those were the first points of a 19-0 run that LA went on in that second half.
Yeah. And, the Giltinis, there's going to be some cap discussions coming up because they are reportedly, or allegedly, I should say, well over the cap. But in the meantime, they're playing champagne rugby. Next.
Yeah, next is New York versus Rugby ATL. This was a nice little homecoming. Well, not homecoming because it wasn't in New York, but for Mark O'Keefe, it was his first appearance, I think, against New York since he departed the club. But this was a game that New York dominated throughout mostly. Rugby ATL was really hurt by the penalties they committed, and particularly when it was 17-7, I believe Andy Ellis and one of Rugby ATL's players got yellow cards. And New York was able to capitalize on that penalty and score a try to really put the game out of reach. But hats off to New York, who really did their homework on Rugby ATL. They knew they were going to be a team that's going to press them hard and come up fast. They had nice, quick ball, a few nice plays in the first half that got them some points. So hats off to New York for bouncing back with a much-needed victory.
And hats off to the butcher, Dylan Fawcett, and his missus for having a new little butcher running around and him playing in the match and playing well. Next up is San Diego versus Houston. If we think back to week one, we knew San Diego was going to be good, and we thought that Houston was going to be better. So flash forward to this week, this was a game that they put on an unbelievable performance, both teams, high-flying, action-packed. And, when it was 24-22, Houston, they had possession of the ball. They had the 2-point lead, scored a really beautiful try. Robbie Poyer made a crossfield kick to Zack Pangelinen, who fed his teammate that was in support for a try that could make a case for a try of the weekend, Matt. Yeah, great win for Houston. Coming off those two whitewashings, 26-0 and 32-0. They made some transitions. They brought in Boyer, and they put it all together. And San Diego is going to get reinforcements in Furno and Patty Ryan. Next.
Yeah, Matt, last game, NOLA versus Austin. NOLA was very lucky to be down only 7 points at halftime. This was a game that Austin dominated, I think, in the first half. NOLA actually even took a 2-point lead in the dying minutes of the match. And then Austin, they gained possession. And I guess this was the weekend of crossfield kicks because Mac Mason makes a beautiful crossfield kick in the direction of Roderick Waters, who was a player to watch coming into this game for his impressive play of late. Dives on it for the game-winning try of the match. Unbelievable finish. Yeah, we had two great finishes this week in the MLR. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, Roderick Waters is somebody that everybody says, oh, wait till he gets into open space and everything else. I was impressed this week by his work in traffic, without much room, getting forward progress every time he had the ball and being smart with the ball. What else you got for us, Colby?
Go Gales. We contribute to winning. Don't forget this. We're on the come up, Matt.
All right. Well, Colby, we're going to have to wait until next week to see how the Gales do again. But in the meantime, thank you for this week's martial law, the turning points in each MLR match. We'll see you next week. And please check out our other segments, including our Major League Rugby show, our Global Rugby Recap, What Are the Odds?, our Major League Rugby Sports Bet show with the Philly Godfather, John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE legend, and Gifty Bailu, martial law, the Zack Attack. And please sign up for our American Red Cross Rugby Wrap-Up Blood Donor Team.